We keep stealing the best and the brightest from around the world, and we wonder why the third world stays the third world. A joke. That's how he's portrayed in England, as a joke. From the man on the NHS scooter with a broken leg who falls off in the corridor, to him taking over as First Minister and not lasting very long. He's portrayed as a joke.
Hi there, welcome to the latest version of my live moan, and I have got a special guest with me tonight because we had Basil on from Twitter last night and it was good fun and enjoyed it. So I've made a sort of open offer to all my friends that I have on YouTube World and some who do X Spaces. So Nick was able to join us tonight, and Nick is, if you've never seen Nick, which I'm sure most of you have, because we, me, him, Silver Fox, Preston and stuff, we do similar things, and a lot of people are into all the channels. If you've not already seen Nick or want to follow Nick, if you look in the description below, I put a link to his YouTube channel there, and I think on his YouTube channel you can get his X as well, but put that up if anybody needs to. So, how are you, Nick? Welcome to the show.
I'm good, thank you, and thank you for the invite. And for people who don't know, I've spent the last 5 minutes trying to figure out how to log on YouTube Live. I didn't even know you could do YouTube Live.
They're good fun. It was Sean Atwood had invited me on to his a couple of weeks ago when I started doing the Keir Starmer stuff. And I think they had me on 3 times. Every time he arrested someone else, me and him would do a live. And the action's quite good because, when we're YouTubers, we spend a lot of time staring at a camera in a room ourselves and it can get a bit silly. So I quite enjoy them. And so maybe getting a wee community. I think I've done 4 or 5. You see the same people popping up, and it's some names that you recognise in the chat, and it's a good fun. And what I normally do is I do my sort of 10-minute moan as normal to camera, and then go to the panel, go to the members' questions and stuff. So if anybody's got any questions for Nick or I, just please put capital Q twice before you ask your question. It just means when I'm scrolling through, normally there's a few hundred comments and the questions sort of jump out at me. So, Nick, what I was going to talk about tonight was Hamza Yousaf and his late claim. Obviously you're based down south, but you'll be well aware of this nutcase we've got hanging about our politics up here. What's the sort of view of Hamza Yousaf from our English neighbours?
A joke. That's how he's portrayed in England, as a joke. From the man on the NHS scooter with a broken leg who falls off in the corridor, to him taking over as First Minister and not lasting very long. He's portrayed as a joke.
I think that's a fair summary, to be fair. He gets a lot of that up here as well. Now, what I'll do, just for yourself and the viewers, I'll play a short video. I think it's about 1.5 minutes long. I found it on X earlier on this morning, and I thought, this is a bit mental. So I'll play this, and then this is, going to be the main thing we chat on today. So let me just line it up.
We have a huge working age demographic time bomb. We also know that by 2050 in both the UK and the European Union, that they will need approximately 45 million workers to sustain our public services. But my goodness, this country's economic prosperity, as well as the European continent's economic prosperity, relies on migration. How on earth are we going to prosper when this continent needs 45 million workers between now and 2050 if we bring up the drawbridge and don't allow people to come here, upskill them, yes, give them lessons and opportunities to learn English.
It's a population trap because what Humza did not mention there is that guess what? Migrants get old too. They also use the welfare state. They also use public services. So if our answer to the demographic crisis is let's just keep having more migration, and by the way, let's keep having more low-skill migration, that is not the answer. The answer to this problem is a limited amount of genuinely high-skill migration, which is what politicians promised the British people, Labour politicians and Conservative politicians. They didn't deliver that. They lied to the British people. At the same time as we invest in pro-family policies in the UK, and we encourage people from these islands to have more children. That's a twofold response that we need. That's what Israel's been doing. It's what Hungary and Poland have been doing. The evidence so far is a bit mixed. But we need to do what we did with smoking and the environment. We need to fundamentally change the culture in this country so we are incentivizing people to have more children, and we are supporting British families, not making life harder for them by saying, well, mass immigration is the answer. That is not the answer to this problem.
All right, Humza, how would you respond to those points that Matthew's made?
We need migration for the prosperity of this country.
Well, Nick, is that the first time you've seen that?
No, I watched it a few hours ago.
What do you think? What's your initial thoughts on it?
Both those guests are right, and both of them are wrong for different reasons. Humza is right in one aspect. At this moment in time, Europe does need 45 million immigrants between now and 2050, if nothing changes. If we convince ourselves the model we've got now is perfect, well, it only continues if we continue doing the same thing. And we know we can't continue doing it. We never should have done this thing in the first place over the last 70 years. But it's unsustainable. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's a short-term answer for politicians who are failing today. So let's look at the NHS as a great example. People are saying all the time, the NHS would collapse without immigration. Perfectly correct. If we removed all immigration today, the NHS would collapse tomorrow. But do you know what? The NHS is collapsing anyway. So, it doesn't provide the service we want. But the reason why immigration props up the NHS is because politicians will not solve the problems that need to be solved within the NHS. Why can't we train enough nurses? Why can't we train enough doctors? And that's the crux of the issue. We have something like 10 million people in this country economically inactive. There's your future employers right there. Yeah. It's just one mistake after another mistake after another mistake. And then Matt Goodwin's talking about what we need is high-skilled migration. No, we don't. And because of that is just a different aspect of the immigration problem we've got. High-skilled immigration takes jobs away from British people. But it also leaves those other countries poorer. We keep stealing the best and the brightest from around the world, and we wonder why the third world stays the third world. We wonder why those countries can't produce a decent country to live in, so people flee. It's because we keep stealing people, and it's a new form of the slave trade. And the NHS is the biggest slave trade organisation in the world. We go around the world and we steal their best, their brightest, and their medically trained staff. We let the poorest countries train medical people that we go and steal because then we think we're going to get a benefit out of it. The whole immigration con needs to be looked at. Do we need 45 million people importing into Europe and the UK? No, we don't. It's killing us. It's absolutely killing us.
Yeah. I think there was one thing that I didn't think of until I was just watching it back then. I've got 2 points that sort of annoy me about the video now. The first thing is when they say we need 45 million, he doesn't say immigrants. He says workers. I don't know the stats, but very, very few people, when we do need, if we do genuinely have any need for a skill shortage of workers or a particular industry, most of them don't come on. So it's not, if we need 45 million workers and we brought in 45 million workers into the Western Europe, how many people is there? Because it ain't 45 million. It'll be at least double that. And I would suggest possibly 3 times that. I would love to know what the average is when we do bring a legal, because this isn't counting the illegals in asylum seekers. This is just purely workers. So if you bring another 45 million to the UK and the EU to work here, how many are you going to end up with in total? And that's kind of where it gets a bit scary. My own personal point of view is we need to start infusing our youth. Because when I was a kid and people were talking about what do you want to be when you grow up, a lot of girls I know in particular, went into the care industry. And some of them are very successful, managers, ward sisters, etc., whatever titles we give them now. And I talk to them regularly. But what I don't see is, I don't see a lot of the youth, and I deal with a lot of our youth through my youth football club. We've got about 100 kids at a time in there. And you don't hear many who are, want to grow up to be a nurse or a doctor. And we had a case up here where we were advertising for train drivers. And I can't believe we've got a shortage of train drivers, because a train driver just now is getting somewhere circa 70 to 80,000 pounds once they do their probation. So how can you have a country with a shortage of train drivers? And somebody said, well, what would you do about it? I said, I'd sort it out in probably the space of a month. Because if I was in Holyrood, we were hoping to be next year, and there was a shortage of anything, let's take the train drivers as an example. I would say, right, well, I'm a representative in Glasgow. So how many high schools do we have in Glasgow? And I would task somebody with making an appointment with me, somebody from the train industry, and somebody from the transport department, and go and have assemblies with all the 14 to 16-year-olds in all these high schools in Glasgow, and you could probably do that in a month. And I guarantee you, if you go in here and you sell it to them properly, and you know the benefits of the industry, whatever, sure, the wages that are available, which are fantastic, and try and energise the youth to go and work and, see potential in that career, I guarantee you would get at least one kid every time you have that assembly who would think, you know what, I think I might want to be a train driver. And I don't believe the Scottish Parliament recently made a play that they want Westminster to give them special visas that they can give out, and that's more than what we get normally, over and above any UK-wide stuff that's on. And what they said was, because we've got skill shortages in certain jobs, 6 months before that, they announced that we have a national housing crisis. So I don't know where we're going to put these people. And the figures up here are between 20 and 25% of our youth will never, not just now, right? They will never in their adult life contribute to national insurance or PAYE. And that's frightening. So we don't have a skill shortage up here. We've got a get up off your arse and go to work shortage up. We've got plenty of people. But when you've got between a fifth and a quarter of your youth who already state will never contribute to the national PAYE schemes, etc. That's pretty frightening. Do you see some of us issues down south with the youth and the sort of early 20-year-olds? Right?
Yeah, I mean, when you said then about going into schools, recruiting, selling the jobs, selling the aspiration, selling the experience of working, getting a good job, we don't do that. And the reason why we don't do that, that's hard work. That's hard work. We've got to go to school to speak to white people and speak to white kids. I don't think so. That's not cool. In fact, I think that's slightly racist. If we're trying to get white indigenous people jobs, it's easier and I get more brownie points if I advertise those jobs abroad. Let's get someone abroad to come here, because that's going to increase our diversity. There's lobby groups working for the immigration sector, lots of NGOs, lots of charities who are selling this all the time, the globalists, the elite. It's easier to hire someone from India or Poland, get them to come here to be a train driver. And then I get the kudos of being a wonderful globalist. It's hard work talking to white scum. And that's the problem. Our elected officials have given up on the white population, the white working class. They see us as beneath them. They see us as the problem. They see us as all you're good enough for is to sign on. And you should be lucky that we're willing to sign the checks and let you sign on. This is the same attitude, the same way of running the country that allowed 100,000 poor white girls to be gang raped over decades, because you're not good enough. You're not like us and my children. You're a subspecies of a human, of being British. We need politicians who are going to put the people first, the people who live here, the people who are born here. And it's a strange thing to say, but hardly anyone does that now in the West. Trump's trying to do it, which is good. And one or two European countries are attempting to do it, but they're getting a lot of pushback from the EU. But we don't put our people first anymore now. And that's the crux of all our problems in this country. If you look at unemployment, you look at migration, you look at the benefit system, you look at crime, it's all because they don't put the people first. Our politicians aren't good enough, they're not bright enough, they're not clever enough. And they're always looking for short-term solutions to problems. And I've worked with many politicians when I worked for Manchester Council. And the most common conversation I'd have with politicians would be, Nick, I've got a problem in my area and I was in charge of antisocial behaviour, reducing crime. And they'd say to me, Nick, I'm up for election in 18 months' time. What can you do in my area to solve antisocial behaviour? And I'd go, in 18 months, nothing. I could waste the money and make it look like I'm solving it, but it would only look like that. I'd be doing nothing once you go past the pink and fluffy stuff. And every politician would say, do that. Spend your budget, waste your money on making it look like you're solving a problem. And I'd go, but that's a waste of money. I don't care, because I need a solution to this problem ASAP. And that's what politicians in Westminster do all the time. They're looking for short-term PR rather than fixing some of our problems. Some of our problems are going to take decades and decades to fix. But you've got to start on step one, fixing it. They don't even want to go on step one because it's too hard, too difficult. And they're only ever worried about their careers.
Yeah, and possibly re-election. But I use this often when I go down to rallies and stuff. I take this with me, and I say, see if you have got one of these or can get one of those. You're eligible to get one. That's who our parliament should be putting first. And if you're America and you've got an American one of these, then that's who they should be looking after first. If you've got a Filipino one of these, then that's who the Philippines should look after first. But we don't have that mindset, and it seems like we don't have that mindset right across Europe. But as you say, it seems easier to just bring people in, and there's this myth that that'll somehow sort the economy. They'll pay, they don't cost any money, and they put money into PAYE, etc. But they all get older. They all bring people with them. So you're putting more strain on our own services and our houses, etc. They're already busting, it seems. So it seems ridiculous to me that you don't say, but you know what? We'll put these people first. We'll start with the 14 to 16-year-olds in the hope that in 10 years' time, that's starting to, you can't fix it in 10 minutes. But they don't seem to have the foresight. And the politicians that I see, they tend to, well, at least give the impression to me that they're only interested when it's coming up to election time. Some of them don't even go to their work, and it's absolutely bonkers. So that's, I think we've done that as much as we can. What other stories caught your eye today, Nick? Was there anything else that got your juices flowing?
What have I been looking at today? It's the same old crap. Something from last night I looked at and was quite surprised. I think it was a Tesco's in London have put plastic containers over all their chocolate bars to stop them being stolen. So you can see a chocolate bar in a container, but if you want that chocolate bar, you've got to go to the counter and then they give you a chocolate bar. That's how bad crime is. That's how bad antisocial behaviour and the degrading of society has become. That chocolate bars now are not safe in a shop. Where the crime epidemic's getting worse and worse and worse. And people who say, Nick, it's chocolate bars. Yeah, it is chocolate bars. Who cares? It's not about the chocolate bar. It's the road we're travelling down. If we accept people stealing chocolate bars, we accept people stealing cars, we expect people mugging people with knives, we start expecting and accepting people being murdered and beaten up. It's the road we're going down. We don't live in a high trust society anymore now. We live on an island of strangers where it seems to be every man out for himself. And that's a dangerous world.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think I can remember when they started putting like a fillet steak in one of those security boxes. And you think, how bad is the world? But I kind of understand that because it's a small thing, it's relatively high value if you're in a supermarket. and most of the expensive toiletries and electrical items. So I kind of get that. But looking at the price of stuff, you're thinking, when are they going to start putting cheese in security, in security boxes? And it's kind of mental. So that doesn't surprise me, but it's a terrible barometer. And I saw a video today, like a young girl took it on her way out of a McDonald's. I think it was in London.
Yeah.
So a load of you saw coming in, and they started fighting with the guard, and you're just thinking, they've got no respect. There's no respect. There's no morals. It's just the society's broke, and we kind of need to fix it. We need to fix it kind of quick. Well, I'm just going to look at the messages just now. While you've been talking, I've been clicking a few and highlighting a few. All the ones that I've got double Q on it are kind of easy for me to identify. So thanks to those that done that.
Well, while you're looking for questions, let me comment on that video you just talked about, Ben, while you're looking for questions.
No problem. I've got my lined up, mate, but crack on anyway.
I saw that video. And we need to
the
ask
McDonald's
ourselves,
one, yeah?
Yeah. We need to ask ourselves, why have we got young people in this country, born and bred here, all colours, all races, this isn't a particular race thing. Why are they like that? Why the feral? Why the wild? And it's for series of things. The first thing is bad parenting. A lot of the blame goes to bad parenting. Single parents, not being raised with manners, with respect. But then also you need to ask yourself, what is society offering these young people? Because they're not stupid. They're imagining their future, and they know what their future is. It'll be unemployment, it'll be benefits, it'll be selling weed, it'll be being a drug dealer, it'll be a bit of a criminal, it'll be a bit of a gangster. And they're seeing that as their future because they know society doesn't care about them. And if society doesn't care about them, they're saying, we don't care about society. We'll burn it all down. If you don't love us, we don't love you. And that's why they're acting out, because there's nothing, there's no value and there's no benefit for not acting out. If those individuals were thinking, right, my life is this, let's plan, I want to go to university, I want to be a doctor. But if I get a criminal record, I can't be a doctor. So there's no deterrence there along the way because they have no aspiration. Society, schooling, and their parents have driven out any aspiration they ever had. We're letting them down. We're letting our youth down. They're playing up. They're getting worse. And until we tackle that, things will just get worse and worse.
Yep, I don't think anybody can disagree with that, matey. Right, so what we got is Humza. This is from Linda. Is Humza talking out his backside again? I thought he was leaving Scotland. No, yeah, I see. Well, yeah, but he's got to work until May, until the election, because he's kind of got a job in Holyrood, although he never turns up. So, yeah, I think it's quite obvious. He's not leaving yet, but what he's playing at, I don't know. And he's been doing a load of these sort of podcast type things as a guest, coming out with even more outrageous things every day, and it's never about Scotland. Hamza Yousaf is actually my representative in Holyrood. He's my local MSP, my constituency MSP. And that frightens the life out of me because he's never there. So I don't know what he thinks he's doing for the community. He actually lives in Dundee, which is a good, I go to Perth, it takes me about an hour. Yeah, so it's about another 20 minutes away from where people he's meant to serve. So it must be about 80 to 100 miles away. So it was a bit of a joke. And I think he's trying to lay himself up for some UN job or a NGO for some foundation.
Absolutely. I'd put money on that. I mean, Humza to me, and I don't mean this as an insult, I mean it's factual. Humza is a DEI hire. It was the only reason he rose up the ranks in the SNP, only reason he became First Minister. He's a DEI hire. Because of his religion and colour of his skin, he got a big tick in the box and he got to the top of the tree in Scotland. The second he was tested, like all DEI hires, the second he was tested, it all fell apart because he wasn't good enough for the job. I don't think he's a very bright man, to be perfectly honest. And what he's doing now, he's he's now laying the foundation to his next career. And you're right, his next career will be NGO. It'll be running a charity. It'll be a head of some immigration refugee group, because he's sellable now because he was the first brown Muslim leader of Scotland, and that's in the world, the woke world we live in now. He is like gold dust. So he's got a good job coming once he leaves Holyrood, but he's just not a very bright man.
Yeah, and unlike most, he gets his First Minister pension, which I believe is half his wage for life, and he stopped becoming the First Minister, which is incredible. It's an absolutely mental thing. Let's see what else we've got here. Hello, Craig. So good to see you and Nick in the interview. You have been treated shockingly. I take it that's about my recent arrest. Thank you for that. It would be great to see you interview Graham Moore of the English Constitution Party. Well, that's a strange thing, because actually somebody that works his office for him emailed me just last week. And when I saw the email come through, I thought, oh no, this is going to be, it's going to be about my arrest. Somebody's wanting me to go and talk about it on a podcast, which hopefully I'll be able to do. I've got a big meeting tomorrow with the top lawyers in Scotland for this type of thing. And one of the questions is, look, I'm a podcaster, I'm a politician hoping to get elected into Parliament next year. So I kind of need to get myself out and about. So what I can and can't say, and hopefully once that's out, I can start doing the rounds. But what he was actually asking me to do was to go on and have a discussion about the benefits of an independent England. And that terms breaking the UK. And I was like, well, I can't really add much to that debate because I'm a staunch unionist. I quite like the UK being as it is. So there's no point in taking you onto a thing because it'll end up an argument rather than discussing the thing. And if that somebody wants to debate why I'm a unionist, then fine. But that's all he was wanting. So I said that to the girl and I says, look, that one's got to be that's no point. I'm not going to fill your criteria there. So I don't know if you got another guest, but it's quite weird that you should say that.
Yeah, I interviewed Graham a couple of months ago talking about English.
Saw that actually. Yeah, good guest to be fair.
Fascinating, very clever, fascinating man.
Yeah.
And we were discussing about. I remember saying that how the Scottish referendum in 2014 turned a lot of English people into more, to be nationalists more. But there's. I'm not sure where I stand. Depends what day you catch me. Some days I want England to go independent. Other days I want to stay in the Union. So I'm all over the place. But there's a conversation that needs to be had. We need to have that conversation out in the open with the public. See what the public want. Both sides of the border, including Wales and Northern Ireland.
We don't need another referendum.
No.
And it ripped the country apart. It ripped Scotland apart. What happened? I didn't realise it at the time. And a lot of people say unionists won the referendum up here. I don't think they did. The more I reflect on it, because you've got people like me who are just, always going to vote to remain. And you've got the separatists who want independent Scotland. We're always going to vote the yes vote.
Yeah.
That chunk in the middle. And I'm just not sure how big this chunk is. It might be the majority of people who are quite happy with status quo. They don't live and breathe it every day. And they thought, when we made them become a unionist or a nationalist that day, when everybody demanded to know how everybody else was voting, which was a new phenomenon to me, and it's ripped up communities, it's ripped up families. I've got family members. In fact, it's weird because the most avid independent person in my family who was out there campaigning for independence, we can have a discussion about it. And we don't have to agree, but we do agree on some things, but we don't have to agree on that particular point. And can still, talk. But I've got other relatives who I've just never spoke to since. And, not through my choice. I've got ex-work colleagues, old neighbours, old friends that I just don't talk to anymore because of that. So be careful what you wish for, Mike. It was a horrible thing. And I don't think Scotland has recovered.
I can imagine how it was because don't forget, we had Brexit 2 years later. Yeah. And Brexit did exactly the same in England. Tore everyone apart.
Yeah, and we had it double, and it was weird because most of the people who wanted Brexit, it wasn't everybody that wanted Brexit also voted to remain in the UK. It wasn't as clear cut as that, but I would suggest the majority that wanted to remain in the UK and were Unionists were wanting out of the EU. But the bizarre thing I found was the majority of those who wanted an independent Scotland wanted part of the EU. And I'm like, well, that's just because you hate the rest of the UK or something like that. That doesn't make sense to me. Strangely enough, my cousin, who was an activist for independence, he just wants true independence, which is independent from Brussels and Westminster, which I kind of can respect that point more than the majority of separatists up here who want to be part of the EU and give away sovereignty. And that kind of baffles me, but be careful what you wish for, mate, because what a horrible time that was. I watched Nick, this is James. I watched Nick Buckley last night with ex-copper. Very insightful. You should watch all. What was it? What was that?
Yeah, that was a Reform UK councillor from Somerset down south. He's an ex-cop, 30 years public service, ex-copper, ex-armed police, ex-magistrate, was an independent for a few months as a councillor, but then has now moved over to Reform. And we were talking about the crap he's had from the council, from his former colleagues, because he's moved to Reform. They've kicked him off all the panels. It was just, he was quite surprised at the tribalism and the backstabbing in politics. He didn't think it went on. I went, you've not seen anything yet.
I've got an ex-Reform candidate whose kid plays for my football team. And the reason his kid plays for my football team is his last football team were getting a bit weird with him because his dad was a Reform candidate. And you're like, I'm not Reform's biggest fan. That's kind of bonkers. You know, that if that's what on society that's affecting kids at kids volunteer football level, then, you know, society's pretty mixed up. Here's Zoe. Now, Zoe's one of these names she's always in the chat, so thanks for your continued support, Zoe. I found you through Nick. Well, there you go, Nick. I need to thank you for that one. Hopefully we can send some your way as a wee bit of a payback. Caroline, cheeky article, she put this on at 7:30 exactly. Obviously having a wee jibe at me for being late. So I do apologise, Caroline. It wasn't my fault, right?
It's my fault. It was my fault.
And for those that were on last night, it was a carry on. It finished rather abruptly, because I could see that it was at my partner's house and my laptop was on one side of the room and the plug was on the other side. So I was running off battery and I'm sitting watching the battery level go down. I'm thinking, I better wrap this up. It's going to die. And I had Basil on as a guest and this computer was showing about 6%. And I had just said, literally, going to need to wrap this up. I'm down at 6% and my computer just went beep off. Right. And I ran and got the plug in, turned my computer back on. And I'm on and I'm like, is my camera button? Everything was working apart from my mic. So I just went, I can't be coping with this. So I'll take the blame for last night, but Nick's already owned up for tonight. So that's for that. Question, do you not think that maybe he's the only one that will prosper with all the kickbacks he's been promised to push this agenda? Looks like that to me. So Andy McDonald, I think, is obviously suggesting the infamous Mr. Humza. And I think, as Nick and I already alluded to, that's probably where we're going with this. Is that fair comment, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, what we need to understand again about Humza, he is not committed to Scotland like the average Scottish person is. And I'm not being racist, I'm not being rude. His roots are not here. His ancestors aren't buried in the ground here. You know, that's why he's always talking about Pakistan and Muslim causes and things like that, because he does see Scotland as his home and he speaks with a Scottish accent, all fine. But he's not committed to this country like other people are. And if Scotland failed tomorrow and suddenly there was no money, no jobs, Humza and his family would find the next country to move to, because that's a trait of them and their family. We have people who are diehard and will stay in their ancestral homeland because it means something to them. There's something about the salt, the dust, the earth, and they want it there in between their toes, and they will stay there. Other people, it's all races, other people are more of a wanderer. They will go where better opportunities. They will follow the buffalo to better pastures. They will get in ships to explore new lands. And Humza and his family are nomads. They will go to the next best country that will do the best deal for them. They're not. He's 99% committed to Scotland, but many Scottish people living in Scotland who have been there hundreds of thousands of years, they're 100% committed to Scotland. There's a difference in that 1%.
Yeah, no, I can agree with you more there. That's a fair point, I think. Is that what we just had? Yeah. Another good question from James Cameron. Who is going to replace all these young, high-skilled people who are leaving the UK? Well, the first thing we're going to do is identify, are we getting more leaving than you would normally expect? And if that is the case, what's making them go? We kind of need to identify that before we solve that problem. But who should be replacing them is the next generation of young people. But that's where the problem is in my eyes. If we sort that out and we energise them and give them hope and, sell them the notion of going and making, a decent career for yourself in whatever field it is. If you're good with your hands, it's construction. If you're good with your head, it's maybe science. I don't know. If you're good at talking, it could be sales or services. And identify these things early and encourage kids that, that's what you should be doing. You should be aiming to we're at that point now where people are possibly now following their parents where they've maybe never worked because we've got a benefit of society. And, have them determined and a bit of drive in them. That's kind of what I think. Because if we don't, then we will have skill shortages, and then the Humzas of the world might write their statements that they're saying. What's your views on that, Nick?
It's a warning to us that we've created a country and we're actually creating a future that the citizens of this country don't want and are willing to go abroad and find a better country. That's an indictment on the way we're running this country. It's not about economics. Some of these people, the non-doms, are foreigners coming here and now we're going to tax them more, they're leaving. Fully understand that. The foreigners in the first place. But people who've been born, bred here, who are now thinking, my future might be in Poland, my future might be in America. That's a worry. And that feeds into the question about why we're not having enough children. Because people don't want to bring the next generation into these islands. Yeah. So until we create a society and a country where people actually want to settle down, want to have a family, want to have children, can afford it, then they're not going to do it. I've had many friends saying to me that they would like to leave. They'd like to go to Poland, Lithuania, America. And my conversation with them now is I use the C word, and the C word to me now is cowardice. And I say to them, oh, England, UK is getting a bit difficult, is it? And you're going to run away. That's your answer to our problems, is you're going to get your football and you're going to go back home. You're going to run away with all your resources and with the education this country is giving you, with all the opportunities this country is giving you, and you're going to run away. Aren't you the person who's been telling me for 10 years about how you're sick of immigration, how you're sick of people coming over here, taking the jobs and not integrating, and how they're a problem? And I agree with them. And I'm saying to them, so your solution now is you're going to be an immigrant. You're going to go to someone else's country and be an immigrant, and you're going to not integrate there. I was like, this is cowardice. And we need to start saying to people, our country has problems. Our country is slowly dying. I get all that. But the answer isn't cowards to run away, for God's sake. What would have happened in 1939 if we all would have run away? What would have happened when Napoleon wanted to invade? The Viking invasion, the Spanish Armada. We've been in worse situations before. And Englishmen and British men didn't run away then. And now it seems to be acceptable. We've been so over-feminized in the West that being a weak man now is seen as normal. So that's what most of these immigrants are coming over here. The weak men. The men who couldn't fix their own country, couldn't make it in their own country. So they abandoned their family and their ancestral homeland to come to our country to be beggars. They're weak men. But our men are just as weak, many of them. And until we solve that, until we have British men being British with a stiff upper lip, taking personal responsibility, fixing their own lives, their families, their communities, their nation, nothing's going to get better. Because all we do now is we look at ourselves and we go, life's tough here. I'm being overtaxed. My life's not great. I'm running away. Well, yeah, you are, because you're a coward. And I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of men like that. And I call them out now all the time. the C word, cowardice.
Craig Morrison. Hi, Craig. Hope you and your family are well. Well, I'm as well as I can be. A lot of people are saying how you cope with what's going on in your life and potentially facing 2 years in jail. But
Stressful.
people, I soon kind of got that fixed in my head. That it was around about the Monday, so it was 3 days in, and I thought, you know what? Seen these 3 days, there are people who have been given news that them or close and loved ones have got terminal illnesses. You know, that wasn't me. I didn't have an accident where I've got a life changing disability because of it. I mean, I think for the people that were injured in Liverpool recently, you know, so it's kind of, I'm not dead. So yeah, that's how I'm sort of coping with that.
It could be a lot worse.
Yeah. Listen, it is bad. Don't get me wrong, the worst case scenario, but I'm going to fight this. I'm quite positive I'll prove that I'm innocent. Whether that reaches court or not, they want me to do that will remain to be seen. But yeah, let's face it. Jenny saying, Houston, you having problems? Boom, boom, Jen. Boom, boom, Jen. This is something I've had all my life, and I use it as a catchphrase. Houston, have a problem. And what I was actually thinking, Nick, was I certainly had problems last night. Jenny, you were watching it, probably laughing at me. Over this, as we get into the sort of late summer, early autumn, I'm thinking of getting around Glasgow and sort of central Scotland and get a picnic table with a banner on it saying, Houston, we have a problem, tell me what it is. And just film it and just try and see, you know, what people are. I think I know what people have got concerns about is high immigration, lack of housing, cost of living, knife crime, these sort of things. I think that's kind of where we are, and I think we've all got those feelings. But I would like to know from the public. Sit down and tell me. So hopefully when I go out into Holyrood next year, I can, you know, it's not just my list of things that I'm annoyed about that I can have a tick list for. It can be those as well. So I quite like that Jen's just gave me a wee reminder of what I'm planning to do. Craig, I have a question for you, the gent that you're talking to. Right, well, you need to pay attention first, Craig, right? And that's put a cue on it, fire it into the chat, and I'll try and catch it. I have done a through, and I've lifted about a dozen or so now. Before we finish up, when I finish these ones, I'll go and see if there's any more before we finish up. Question, not hate, just facts. Aye, England stroke Wales, 3,000 mosques, 130 Sharia courts, 50 Sharia councils, 9 mayors, 4 million Muslims, 78% of women do not work and claim benefits, 63% of all Muslims don't work. Yeah, there's no question in there. It's a statement, and I don't think because you are using facts, get any disagreement from either of us two on that one. Is that fair to say?
I mean, those are facts. But me, I don't necessarily see Muslims as the problem. Because what I see immigration from the third world as the problem. The fact they're Muslims is incidental to me, because I know lots of Muslims who were born here over many generations and have assimilated, and apart from their religion, you wouldn't even know they were different to us. We have Africans, Christian Africans in this country, again, from the third world, who are just as destructive, just as much as a problem as the Muslims from the third world. Immigration is the problem. It isn't necessarily the religion of the people. I mean, the way they practice their religion, of course, that's an issue. But that's because they're from the third world. It's we need to concentrate more on mass immigration and stopping that. That then solves many of our other problems, without having to dissect what parts of mass immigration do we think we don't want. Let's just call it mass immigration.
Yeah, and I need to disagree with you slightly on that one point, and it might just be luck on our part. But we had a kid who came to play for us, and his father had a local African superstore, and he was quite prominent in his church. He used to do English language lessons for people who just, you know, didn't have a good grasp of that language. And once he came into the club, and we'd been about maybe 10 at the time, maybe a wee bit younger actually. And he was comfortable. He started every few weeks, he would phone me up and say, Craig, I've got a boy in the church and his son is 12. Do you have space in that team? And within a few months, he really brought a lot of Africans into our club. And I remember one night commenting on it to one of our other coaches. And the Christian Africans that we had were actually, I thought, they better disciplined than the indigenous kids. They seemed more respectful. So that's my own personal dealings with the African Christian community. And I may just have been working it was because they were from one particular area, and a lot of them were Western Africa, Nigeria, all that sort of area around there. They weren't all Nigeria, but a fair chunk. Cameroon, that was kind of where a lot of these kids came from. But the ones that I saw, certainly, I kind of was all right. We were fortunate.
The fact those Nigerian kids were going to church means they were the cream of the Nigerians coming to this country.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Because the fact they've got a pastor in the church, and maybe they've got fathers at home, all that is benefit and benefit and benefit and benefit. But they're a tiny minority.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. How do we introduce a sense of duty into people, duty to self-improvement and improving society? Well, again, I can only talk through my own experiences, and I've been involved in kids football as a volunteer for about 16, 17 years, and I've started this club myself. It runs out, but I started it about 10 years ago. And kids there's a lot of good kids out there. There's a lot of little shits, right? But the good ones kind of outweigh the bad ones. You just remember the bad ones a bit easier. And I think you can get into their heads. And the younger you get into their heads about, having something aim for in your life and having discipline and having a purpose, then the better chance we've got. Now, that might be the way we're educating them. I don't know. And that might be because parents have obviously got a bigger influence on kids than anybody, like myself, with football. You're only in contact with these kids maybe between 2 and 5 hours a week. So, you can have a certain input into them. The parents are obviously going to have far bigger influence, and rightly so. But can we influence them more at schools? Are we teaching them right? Are we, teaching them skills that they think, when am I ever going to use trigonometry, even if I flip burgers at Burger King, right? But we can give kids, and I see it with my own eyes in front of me, when you talk to them in a way to inspire them, you can have really, really good positive results. And I've seen that with kids from, great family backgrounds to kids who there was one kid they dealt with quite a bit. He was from a single parent situation. He ended up at his grand's. She couldn't cope with him. He ended up in the care. And even at that point, we still kept him at the club when it came to football. So we have positive impacts with any kids through all the, the different spectrums of society. So I kind of think that's the key to it. And that's just with my experiences. What about you, Nick? How do you answer that one?
In 2 different ways. The first way to answer this is agreeing with you. I've spent over 2 decades doing what you've just been talking about then. That's what I got my MBE for. Working with kids on the street, stopping them getting involved in crime and antisocial behaviour. I designed projects for Greater Manchester Police doing this, same with Manchester Council. Then I set a charity up, an award-winning charity doing this sort of work across Greater Manchester. I've advised a couple of different prime ministers now on doing this across the country. Never led anywhere. I never got a lordship or anything like that. But on an individual level, you're right. It's about seeing the value in every individual, and every individual has value. You may struggle to find it because they're hiding it, they're so disruptive, but every individual has value. If you've got a kid, if you're a parent or an uncle and there's children in your family you think are going off the rails, my advice was, first of all, you need to be involved in their lives. I think it's something like 90% of men in jails in the UK came from single parent households, didn't have fathers at home. 90%. There's the problem. No fathers at home. Now, I always get accused of, you're having a go at single mums. Well, no, all I'm doing is stating the facts. It's hard raising kids. Humans are complicated to raise. That's why we're designed to have 2 parents. Lots of animals get the female pregnant, disappear, and the female raises the next generation. We're not designed for that because it's hard raising human babies and children that need both parents, and both parents bring a different perspective to that child. Get your kids involved in football clubs, things like the Scouts, Army Cadets, something where there's some discipline, because kids might tell you they don't want discipline, but when kids have discipline and rules, they thrive. because they know where the boundaries are. They don't have to wonder, can I cross that line or not? How do I get around that rule? Once they know what the rules are and those rules are enforced, kids then can relax because they know I'm in a safe space. I know what the rules are. I don't have to worry about anything. That's, and then believe in them, help them, support them. I've met so many kids who I'd say to them in the police station, what do you want to do? After you've left school, and they're like, nothing, I don't know. It's like, how don't you know? I could handle it when they said, I want to be a Premiership footballer. I want to be Ronaldo. And it's like, well, I get that. It's never going to happen, but I get, at least it's a dream. It's an aspiration. But to get to 14, 15 and you go, nothing, I don't want to do anything. We've sucked out their dreams. And what probably happened was at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, they tried stuff, they failed, they fell on the backside. Parents didn't care. They were laughed at. No one helped them up. No one built them up again. No one told them to try again. No one helped them correct the mistakes, why they failed. And eventually they learnt, I fail at everything. And it hurts when I fail. But if I don't try, I don't fail, and it doesn't hurt. And we need people supporting our young people to be better than they are. Everybody can be better than what they are. And there's no point being better than someone else, because that's an unfair match. All of us, what we need to do is try to be better than the person we were yesterday, because that's who we're in competition with. Us yesterday, not Ronaldo. We're not going to be as good. There's no point competing against Ronaldo. Compete against yourself. Be a better version of who you were yesterday. So that's what I do on an individual level. On a governmental level, what we need to do is we need to dramatically shrink the size of the state. We're now basically a socialist country. The government does everything for everybody. And the more it does, the less we do for ourselves. And it's called learned behavior, because we expect the government to step in all the time and solve our problems. We've got government now feeding children during school holidays. So that's one thing parents don't have to do anymore now. What's next? Brushing their teeth, sending social workers around to get children to brush their teeth. We need to instill in parents some responsibility. We need to instill individuals some personal responsibility. But it's hard to do when the state is so big and the state interferes in all our lives every minute of every day.
Yeah, no, fair comment. Question, do you see Glasgow? Now, what I've done, guys, well, Nick was talking there, I went through all the ones right up to now, and I fired over the ones that get questions next to them. So I think there's about 4. So just going to fire through these. I'm conscious that I don't want to be here for an hour. I think there's some good TV on for you guys at half past 8, if there is such a thing. So we'll just fly through these. I think there's 3, maybe 4. Do you see Glasgow ending up with Bradford, Birmingham, etc.? Govanhill already is weak and very similar. Yeah, there's areas in Glasgow that are already similar to the places down south that you mentioned, where they're, predominantly people of one single race, and in some instances are not safe for people who are not in that race to go to. And I done a video not so long ago where Alex Kearney, who runs the Spartan Child Protection, had went to Govanhill, which is Nicola Sturgeon's constituency, oddly enough, Nick, and it's one of the worst in Glasgow. And he was showing you what used to be beautiful, sort of Georgian, Victorian closes with, at one point really nice flats, and he showed the conditions of it now, and you genuinely would have thought you're in a third world. So, yeah, and if the SNP have the way and if, they get more open door policies, then it will unfortunately just get worse.
Yeah. The warning on that is every city and large town is on this path already. Yeah. Some are worse than others, but every city and every large town in the UK is already on this path.
Fact 2, all kids in UK schools are required to learn about Islam. England, Wales, newborn male baby's favourite name, Mohammed. Scotland, it's number 2. Average families between 6 and 8 children, yeah. And that, why it surprised me that Reform are so keen to back scrapping the 2-kid cap on child benefit, because I can't see the most affected by that positively being Indigenous people, to be perfectly honest with you, Tommy.
Reform have got a hangover from Brexit in UKIP. The people in Reform are mired by accusations over decades and decades of being racist and Nazis. And they're bending over backwards all the time to show people that we're not Nazis, we're not racist. Do you know what? The vast majority of people in the country don't think they're racist, don't think they're Nazis. They need to strengthen up their backbone a bit, and they need to stop pandering to these socialist, woke, leftist idiots. The words Nazi and fascist and racist don't mean
Islamophobia doesn't mean anything.
they don't mean anything anymore now. They really don't. So stop being scared of those words.
Really. I've sort of done that one, Andy, just with a previous question, so I'll go over that twice. Andy McDonald, have you considered once charges are dropped a defamation suit? Okay, well, I'm going to cop out of that one, Andy, and just say, stay tuned. I think you'll figure it out for there. So, now, I kind of think we've worked our way through the questions. The comments are just like, I don't know how many there is, there's probably about 1,000 or so there. So, and I hope we've picked up all the questions. You enjoyed the experience on tonight?
Yeah. I enjoy speaking to people more than staring into a camera on my own and trying to have a conversation with myself. I don't do many like that. That's why I'm always inviting you, David, Preston. I mean, like people on my channel all the time because I'd rather speak to someone. I find it really hard talking to a camera.
You had asked me on recently, and you'll please forgive me for.
Yeah.
Life is a bit up and down at the moment,
Of course.
I've got things that are just quite fluid, and hopefully I'll calm down in the next. But I've got quite an experience to do at the end of the week. I'm really looking forward to. I've got lawyer on Tuesday, and then once those two things are sorted, hopefully I can get back in the game, because it's the process that's the punishment. I mean, we hope with this whole thing, and there's a couple of videos that I've thought about doing, and I'm like, no, I'm going to see a lawyer on Tuesday. I'll just, do that first. So it affects me, and we both. It does. I'm making out an income from this now. This in the last few months has been building well, and that's off adverts and stuff. So you guys have to thank for that, and it should allow me to do more videos. But it's had the opposite since last Friday, which is it's a bit harsh. And when I'm doing them, sometimes I'm very cautious of what I'm saying, and you're thinking, well, I didn't do anything wrong last Friday, so why should I let that bother me? I mean, I've made 1,300 political videos and been arrested for one, which hopefully the public will see I'm completely innocent for in the distant future. You think, well, why should I stop doing what's right? And if somebody says something stupid in a position of power and I don't have the ability to question them, if I don't have the ability to give opinion on the politics of today and the things that are going on in current affairs, then that's not a society I want to be part of. So you've then got to make a choice. Do you put the whole thing in the bin, or to try and fight against it? And I'll give you one guess at kind of where it's put me. What it has done, I'm quite a determined bugger. And I was determined up until last Friday to get into Holyrood to make a difference to my part of the UK called Scotland. These buggers with their actions, they've actually just multiplied that.
Yeah. Are you aware what happened to me 5 years ago?
No.
About being cancelled over Black Lives Matter?
No. Because I tell you, I wasn't aware of it until up to recently. And I was looking, it's on, so I know a bit about it on the Free Speech Union website. Is that maybe where I've seen it? There's Mac. Oh, he's a bit of bother as well. But yeah, that's society. So you either cave in and they win, or you stand up. You stood up, and it's kind of where I am as well. Yeah. So
and it's hard, and it's stressful, and it takes its toll on you. But the only alternative is to die on your knees. And I'd rather die on my feet fighting. I didn't think I was going to win that battle 5 years ago. And it took me 5 weeks to beat them all. And in hindsight, they capitulated so easily. But at that time, I was fighting for my life. And it turned out right. But I didn't know that at the time. And you're right, the process is the punishment. In those 5 weeks, I lost 1.5 stone in 5 weeks.
Aye. Well, the other thing that's worth talking about, we were talking about how much it costs to defend us. And I'm going to have some great representation, some absolutely fine. I'll talk more about that in the next week or two. But that's just a fortunate position I'm in. And without the advice of the KC, who's going to advise on this case, without his costs, right, the lawyer's part could be up to, depending on if it goes full distance, up to £40,000.
Yeah.
Now, I can't afford that. I'm just very, very fortunate, touch wood, that, get people there that support me to do this. But that kind of means the vast majority of people are not in that position. And I'm only in that position through pure grace of my exposure that this channel's gave me.
Yeah.
If I didn't do this channel, I could have said similar things, well, which, were nothing anyway, but, and being the victim of this sort of action and not being in a position to get any help with this, and we'd probably have, been represented by the court-appointed lawyer and probably talked into saying I am guilty just to put the whole thing to bed, because I had no access to £40,000 plus worth of advice I'm getting, because the 40,000 is just a lawyer. I've got a KC on speed dial. So I don't know, their fees would have been more. I'm not saying it would be 80,000, but the actual cost to defend yourself properly in this country is absolutely ridiculous. So when this ends, that's the kind of thing that I'm going to do a wee journey on this, about how unjust justice is. That it's not about being right and wrong. It's about being able to afford or not afford. And that's evidently wrong. That's not what justice is all about, or should be all about. But so you get through yours. I'm quite confident I'm going to get through mine, and I'm determined that it'll be the making of maybe a bit of grace of God. So, listen, thanks very much, Nick, for coming on. Thank you very much to all the people. I think this is the 5th one I've done, and I'm already flicking through the names here. There's a wee community growing because I'm starting to recognise a lot of the names. While we're talking, you're all slagging each other and having a laugh in the comments. That's great to see. So, well done. And it just remains for me to say what I always say at the end of my podcasts. If you liked the video, thumbs up, click share, put some comments in. It will be available within about 10 minutes as a standalone video, not as a live. If you share it with your friends, you'll be able to catch up with it. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to my channel, and you can subscribe to Nick's in the description. There's a link to his. And if you hit the notification bell, YouTube will tell you when we put new videos out. But the most important thing, I'm sure the type of person that thinks Europe needs 45 million workers, and that would mean probably 100 million extra people in it to actually let Europe survive. No you. But everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio now.